Hi, my name is Max Flower. I'm here with Whitney Tilson at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting. Whitney is an investor, as most people know, but he's also a major philanthropist, does a lot of work, especially with education. Whitney, tell us what inspired you to get involved.
Well, I guess it comes from my parents, which is a little bit nature and nurture. My parents were, according to family lore, the third couple to meet and marry in the Peace Corps in 1962, and I came along a few years later. But my parents have always been very mission-driven. I grew up in developing countries. The first school I ever went to was in Morogoro, Tanzania, where we lived for 3 years. I went to school in Managua, Nicaragua for 3 years. So I saw a lot of the world. I saw how fortunate I was. Relative to the people in Tanzania and Nicaragua and so forth. And my parents always instilled in me, the message that, Whitney, you won, as Warren Buffett says, you won the ovarian lottery. You have been blessed with so much good fortune in your life that if you just take that good fortune and get rich and spend it all on yourself, then that is a wasted life. And that you have a duty to take that good fortune and instead try and make the world a better place. And so that's what I've tried to do.
Well, that's an extraordinary story for so many reasons, but one of them is all the cultural diversity that you've had around the world. What I know you specialize is in focusing on education. Tell us more about some of your initiatives there.
Sure. Well, look, my parents were both union teachers at New Haven High School in New Haven, Connecticut when I was born. So it's sort of natural, I guess, that I've been drawn to education. My father has a doctorate in education, focused on educational projects in third world countries. But I've always believed that to address almost any social problem, hunger in the third world, homelessness in the United States, etc., that you can give someone food, you can give someone housing, but if you give a child a good education from the early days, then particularly if they are fortunate enough to live in the United States, well-educated people in the United States tend not to be hungry and homeless and so forth, right? So I've always been very educational focused. So it really, my first big involvement was I was graduating from college in 1989, and Wendy Kopp's younger brother introduced me to her, and she was, of course, the founder of Teach for America, and she was graduating from Princeton the same year I was graduating from Harvard, and we got on the phone, and I had actually met her at a conference. I knew she was a great entrepreneur. I thought she had a great idea, so I agreed to defer my job in corporate consulting that I had and go down to New York, and I was employee number 2 at Teach for America, and helped her get that started. And so that has begun a lifelong, almost a 27-year involvement now with trying to improve the public school system in the United States. So I've been on the board of KIPP charter schools in New York City. I helped start something called Democrats for Education Reform to fight the political fight around ed reform. So that's really been probably 80% of my philanthropic work.
Well, I like that, especially because I remember Charlie Munger once said, or probably has said it several times, to try and fix education, you have to be a Saint or a Gates, and you're trying to fix education. Tell us about one program that you've been involved with, including Teach for America, that's really impressed you and that's really produced results that have amazed you.
Yeah, well, look, I would cite 3. I know you asked for one, but your video camera has lots of tape in it, I assume, and there's been one per decade. 30 years ago or 25 years ago, it was Teach for America, I thought was a big idea, and that has really been a revolution, both in terms of Teach for America itself, but more importantly, when we founded it, we always thought that if we got a bunch of really motivated, smart, well-connected people into the belly of the beast, they would start coming up when developing innovative new programs to tackle that problem. So that leads me to the second organization I'd mentioned, which is KIPP Charter Schools. It's now one of the largest charter networks in the country. It's 184 schools in 20 states, has 70,000 students, virtually all of whom are low-income minority kids who, statistically speaking, maybe 8% of them would earn a college degree for poor kids. And instead, more more than 50% of our students ultimately earn a 4-year college degree. Virtually all of them finish high school, so we have almost no high school dropouts. And so it's been, KIPP has been an amazing thing, and I've been on the board of KIPP New York for more than a dozen years. And the last thing I would mention is overseas. There's one of the biggest problems in the world is that the so-called bottom billion families, the poorest billion people in the world living on $2 a day or less, there are about 700 million children in those families who basically aren't getting any education at all. The so-called public schools in India, which is where about half the children are, and the rest are mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, are either non-existent or truly awful. Teacher absenteeism rates of 50%, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm on the board of something called Bridge International Academies, which was started by a couple Americans, a couple Harvard grads, who have created a very low-cost private schools, and it's a for-profit, though it's never really made any profit. It's more of a mission-driven for-profit that provides a very solid, albeit basic education for the poorest of the poor children, and at a tuition cost of about $6 to $7 per child per month. So that's a price point that these families can afford, and providing a massively better alternative than no schooling or the government schools for those kids. So Bridge is I think those are sort of the three most revolutionary things I've discovered and gotten deeply involved with over almost 30 years.
So with the second one, almost no high school dropouts, which is huge. The third one, the bottom billion, which is huge. I forgot the point, a significant point with the first one, except
Teach
fixing.
for America has been providing very large numbers, 5,000 to 10,000 teachers a year, going into the school districts of the greatest teacher shortages in the United States, and those teachers have really made a difference. But I actually think Teach for America's biggest impact has been what those teachers have done after their 2-year commitment. For example, KIPP Charter Schools was founded by two of those Teach for America teachers who were teaching a class of 5th graders in Houston and doing great things with those kids, but realizing they were not changing those children's life trajectories or life outcomes because they only had them for 8 months.
Right.
So they needed to start their own school to have them all day, every day, for at least 4 years, which was middle school. And now KIPP has basically, in almost all the cities we operate, starts in pre-K or K and goes all the way through 12th grade, because we realized after a while that even 4 years wasn't enough. We needed the entire K through 12 time period to really take kids whose demography says that they're going nowhere, and instead send them all not only to college, but to graduate, not just any college, but 4-year colleges.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazingly powerful. I look forward to continuing to watch the results, because I know we're going to feel them as a whole in our society. 3 programs, 3 decades. What's next?
You know, I'm sort of like Warren and Charlie in investing, which is every day I'm meeting new people, I'm building relationships, and I'm building knowledge. I'm a reading machine when it comes to investing, but also when it comes to my philanthropy, when it comes to education reform. And I had never heard of Bridge International Academies a few years ago, and then somebody introduced me to the founders, and then I discovered it, and I led an investment in it via the board I'm on of the Pershing Square Foundation, Bill Ackman's hedge funds foundation. And so that's how I came to be on the board. So in other words, I actually I don't think I've ever had a grand strategic plan for my life or for my philanthropy. Instead, I just try and do the right things every day and build a prepared mind and be ready to act when opportunities present themselves. So circle back with me in a few years, and I'm sure there'll be something new and exciting that I will have leapt on, but that I have no knowledge of today.
I like everything that you said, and I'm going to lead into something that moves away from philanthropy, but goes to you and how you make yourself a better person every day, and you try to do the right thing every day. Do you have certain rituals that you go through, say every morning or every night, that set you up for the day so you know you're going to have an excellent day?
I do a few things. People think that I get no sleep, but I actually get a good night's sleep.
I didn't think you got any sleep.
I work extremely hard and intensively from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., but then I get my 7.5 hours of sleep. Maybe I sneak in half an hour of the Daily Show before I go to bed, something like that, right? But then I try and do what Warren Buffett does, which is I try and have as few meetings as possible. Yeah. As much as I love meeting people, face-to-face meetings are very inefficient. So basically I'm reading most of the day. I have almost no scheduled meetings, almost no scheduled calls, and instead I process email, and that's how I communicate with people, because it's a very efficient way to communicate with a very large number of people. So to some extent, I'm sending things out, but more I'm just processing and reading and looking for opportunities, looking to introduce people, looking to meet new people, at least via email. So one of the things I've been forced to become good at is saying no. Because on a daily basis, there are people who want to meet with me to either help them get a job at a hedge fund, usually, or they want to tell me about their great new nonprofit education-related organization. And at one time, I was saying yes to all of that, and I found my days were getting sucked up with people who wanted to have coffee with me for 15 minutes, but it's never 15 minutes, it takes an hour. And so now I've gotten much better at politely saying no, not because I have a big ego or because I think I'm too important, but because there are only 16 hours a day, and I've now reached a position in my life where I can feel like I can make a difference in the world with those 16 hours a day. And of course, I still have to run my business 12 hours a day, at least, right? So I have to become very deliberate, very thoughtful, and very proactive in how I spend my time to maximize the impact I make. And that sometimes means I have to be ruthless in just not meeting with everybody who wants to meet with me. So, for example, in investing, when I come out here to Berkshire, I co-host and pay for a cocktail party that 200 people come to, and I'm just there for 4 hours, and anybody who wants to talk to me, I'd love to talk. I'd love to meet everybody who comes there, right? That's much more efficient than me trying to have coffee individually with 200 different people.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. So you're ruthless with your time and you keep your schedule clear, and that way you can maximize when you are connecting with people. How about for your physical health? What do you do to keep yourself going? Because you've got a hell of a schedule. You've got a great record of accomplishments.
Yeah. Most importantly, I get mostly good sleep regularly throughout the year. That's key. And then I exercise every day. I find it clears my mind. It's just important. It's part of my routine. It used to be, I just go play and pick up basketball with some guys, and I still do that. I love just showing up at the gym, and I can come when I want. I can leave when I want. I don't have to schedule it. If a meeting comes up, I don't go do it. So pickup basketball is perfect for my schedule, and I just love the sport. I've been doing that for decades. But recently, it may be a little bit of a midlife crisis. I'm 49, so I turn 50 later this year. I discovered the Navy SEAL boot camp out in San Diego, out in Coronado, and I went out there once, and then I went back, and where they basically just kick your butt for a 3-day weekend. You don't get any sleep, and they put you in the water, and they freeze you, and they torture you, sort of like what they do to Navy SEAL candidates in the BUDS program. And that sort of got me into more, I wouldn't call it quite extreme sports, but more, ramping up my physical fitness. And so, I'm running Tough Mudder races or Spartan races pretty much every weekend now. Sunday morning, I've got a friend's wedding Saturday night. It's going to go to the wee hours, and I'm up at 5 a.m. to drive outside New York City, and I'm going to run a half marathon, but up in the mountains on rocks and hiking up and down a mountain for 13 miles, right? It's called the Bear Mountain Half Marathon. Like, I'm challenging myself physically in a way that I didn't before, because it's a lot of fun. I do it with friends. I'm in the best shape of my life at age 49, and that feels good. And because I want to live a long time, and I think if I can maintain a significantly higher level of fitness, and I can keep this up without overdoing it and hurting myself, which I've already had some scares. That I will live a longer, happier life. So that's a relatively, I'd say over the past 18 months, I've introduced that to my life.
Essentially becoming an Ironman.
I'm running some triathlons this year. I am not at the level where I could do a full Ironman at this point. I did run the New York City Marathon last year on 3 days' notice. It happened to be on my 49th birthday, and it was on a Sunday, November 1st, my 49th birthday, and I woke up on Thursday morning and I was having a dream about running the marathon, and then I woke up and I said, you know what? I should do it.
Yes.
And so I called up a friend of mine at the Robin Hood charity, and so I decided I was going to raise money for charity.
Yeah.
And so with literally 3 days before the marathon, with absolutely no training, and I had never run more than 10K in my entire life, and that was when I was 18, I decided to see if I could run a marathon based on my level of fitness with the Navy SEALs and playing basketball and that kind of thing. And so I ran it in about 4 hours. Didn't do permanent damage to my knees or anything. And I raised $76,000 for Robin Hood while I was at it. So it was an amazing experience. But you know what? I'm not sure. I'm really up in the air whether I want to do it this year. My big thing this year that I'm going to try and raise money for KIPP charter schools is I'm going to climb Mont Blanc and the Matterhorn.
Yeah.
Mont Blanc is the highest peak in the Alps, and the Matterhorn is the iconic Matterhorn.
Yeah.
And sort of like the marathon, I've never climbed a mountain before. I've done a little bit of rock climbing. I think I have the technical skills to do it. And so I've hired a guide, and KIPP's motto, KIPP Charter Schools, its motto to the kids is we're climbing the mountain to college.
Yes.
So I think it's appropriate,
Yes.
now I'm a KIPP board member,
Yeah.
that I'm going to go climb two of the most iconic mountains in the world to raise money for these kids to help them climb the mountain to college. So anybody who would like to donate to my climbing the mountain trek on behalf of KIPP, please contact me. I'm easy to track down on the internet.
Well deserved. Well, I thought that my workout schedule of riding my bike from Marina Del Rey along the beach up to Santa Monica to yoga and then to the Santa Monica steps and then riding back again was an Ironman competition. You've just raised the bar because not only are you almost doing Ironmans, but you're also generating money for charities. And so I've got a lot of work that I've got to do, not only in my physical fitness, but in making the world a better place through philanthropy. Whitney, I appreciate your time. You're a living legend. Thanks so much for sharing all that with me, and keep up the great work.
My pleasure.